Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to Storytime. This week I have some exciting tall tales and timeless tales for you. I've got a story about a fish, a story about families, and a story about someone named Paul Bunyan, but you'll hear about him a little bit later. Right now, let's get started with our opening song. I wiggle my fingers, I wiggle my toes, I wiggle my shoulders, I wiggle my nose. And now the wiggles are out of me and I'm as still as I can be. Jangles, A Big Fish Story by David Shannon. When the sun goes down and the weather's just right, Big Lake gets smooth as glass and a thin mist whispers across it. That's when you might catch a glimpse of Jangles. My father told me lots of stories, but my favorite was about a giant trout he saw when he was a kid. I still remember sitting with him in front of the big stone fireplace at the cabin. He pulled out a dirty green tackle box and shook it a couple times so it rattled. Then he told me this story. When I was a kid, Jangles was the biggest fish anyone had ever seen or heard. That's right, you could hear Jangles. He'd broken so many fishing lines that his huge, crooked jaw was covered with shiny metal lures and rusty old fish hooks of all shapes and sizes. They clinked and clattered as he swam. That's why he was called Jangles. Jangles was so big he ate eagles from the trees that hung out over the lake and full-grown beavers that strayed too far from home. But he didn't seem to care much for the taste of kids. In fact, people swear one time Jangles saved a baby who fell into the lake when his family's canoe tipped over. They say he took that baby up so gently that none of the hooks even stuck it, and he swam to shore. Supposedly, he gave the baby's mama a dirty look as if to say, "What are you doing bringing your precious little baby out here in a tippy old canoe?" Everyone wanted to catch Jangles. They held big tournaments with lots of prize money, but no one could bring him in. He was too smart and too strong, and he lived too deep down in the middle of the lake. They tried all sorts of tricks, like using whole turkeys for bait. One fellow even tried dynamite. He threw big cans of tuna fish in the water and waited till he heard Jangles coming. Then he lit a stick of dynamite and tossed it in the lake. I don't know if it hit a rock or something, but that dynamite came flying back out of the water and into his boat and blew it to smithereens. Then he had to swim all the way back to his dock. He said Jangles came and bumped him on his butt, but nobody believed him. One time when I was just about your age, I was fishing over where the creek comes into the lake, and my anchor came loose. I was concentrating so hard on catching a fish that I didn't notice I was drifting way out into the middle of the lake. There wasn't another soul out there, and it was getting dark. Just when I realized where I was, I felt a tug on my line. Not a real big tug, but something was on the other end. I started to reel it in. It was wiggling all right, but it didn't really feel like a fish. I finally got it in, and what do you know, I'd snagged an old fishing rod that somebody must have dropped out of a boat a long time ago. I started to reel in that one too. I cranked and finally felt the end of it getting closer to the surface. Then I heard a sound that made my whole body feel all prickly. It was kind of soft at first. Tinkle, tinkle, dingle. But then it started getting louder. Tingle, jingle, jangle. Now, I used to daydream all the time about catching Jangles, but right then I was scared to death. Just when I saw the lure on the end of the line, a gigantic shadow came out of the deep darkness and swallowed it up. My rod bent nearly in half. I was hanging on to it like it was my first dollar when Jangles suddenly swam under the boat and pulled me right out over the side and into the cold, black lake. Down we went like a crazy horse and buggy. Pretty soon I noticed I could still breathe and the water wasn't cold anymore. Finally, we came to a cave in the deepest part of the lake. It was decorated with parts of old boats and lots of rods and reels. "This is my home," said Jangles. "It's been a long time since I had a visitor." His voice was so low and soothing it seemed perfectly natural that the fish was talking, so I wasn't afraid at all. Then Jangles told me stories, amazing, wonderful stories about the beginning of the earth before there were people, and stories about wise old redwood trees and animals who were silly and the great fish that lived before him in Big Lake. It was like Jangles was my magic uncle. After a while, I started to get sleepy, and he said, "Time to go." He told me to hang on to the big fin on his back. I still had the old rod in my hand, and as we swam up and the water turned from black to purple, I slowly pulled out some line and made a bunch of big long loops. When we reached the surface, Jangles swam alongside my boat. Quick as a minnow, I hopped off the fish's giant back and threw the coils of line around him. Then with a sharp yank, I spun him upside down. Now you might not know this, but when you turn a fish upside down, even a big old smart fish like Jangles, it gets confused and can't hardly move, like it's paralyzed. "Gotcha!" I shouted. Jangles just lay there, but he could still talk. "You tricked me," he cried. "I told you secrets from the beginning of time, and this is how you thank me?" "You're a fish," I said, "and I have caught you." "Set me free," Jangles urged. "I am more than a fish. I am a storyteller and a story." "A story no one will believe if I let you go," I replied. Then Jangles asked me, "Is that more important than doing what is right?" I thought of all the wondrous things I'd heard that day. Then I thought about people dragging whole turkeys around the lake. "You're right," I said. "I'm sorry. I will set you free, but what can I do to apologize?" I swear, Jangles grinned at me with that big crooked jingly jaw of his. "There is one thing you can do to help me," he said, "and it would also prove you caught old Jangles." That's when my dad stopped telling his story and gave me his tackle box. It was full to the top with shiny metal lures and rusty old fish hooks of all shapes and sizes. He never told anyone about catching the giant fish. He kept it a secret until that night when he told me. And now I'm telling you. The end. We just heard a story about a fish. Let's do a rhyme about a fish. And while we're doing it, let's move our hands like little fishies. It's called Fishing Frolic. Fish have fins and fish have scales. Fish have gills and fish have tails. Fish swim both night and day, so when do they have time to play? Let's do that one again. It's a little harder for me to fish with my left hand. Okay, Fishing Frolic. Fish have fins and fish have scales. Fish have gills and fish have tails. Fish swim both night and day, so when do they have time to play? Families, Families, Families by Suzanne Lang and Max Lang. Some children have lots of siblings. Some children have none. Some children have 2 dads. Some have 1 mom. Some children live with their grandparents, and some live with an aunt. Some children have many pets, and some have just a plant. Some children live with their father. Some children have 2 mothers. Some children are adopted. Some have stepsisters and brothers. Some children bunk with their cousins. Some have a mom and pop. Some children's parents are married. Some children's parents are not. So no matter if you have a ma, a pa, a hog, this llama, 10 frogs and a slug, a cousin named Doug, a great-grandma Betty, and a great-aunt Sue, uncles Hal, Al, and Sal, and Uncle Lou, too, 1 stepsis, 3 stepbros, 2 stepmoms, and a prize-winning Rose, a robot butler to serve you tea, the world's biggest grandpa, or whatever it might be. If you love each other, then you are a family. Next up, we've got a song to the tune of The Muffin Man. It's called With My Family. First, we're going to sing about Sally and how she likes to go swimming. Then we're going to sing about Billy and how he likes to go hiking. Then we're going to sing about Jared and how he likes to sing fun songs. Then we're going to sing about Molly and how she likes to fly a kite. And last, we're going to sing about Maudie and how she likes to cook good food. Okay, sing along with me if you can. Tell me what you like to do, like to do, like to do. Tell me what you like to do with your family. Sally likes to go swimming, go swimming, go swimming. Sally likes to go swimming with her family. Next is Billy going hiking. Billy likes to go hiking, go hiking, go hiking. Billy likes to go hiking with his family. Next is Jared singing fun songs. Jared likes to sing fun songs, sing fun songs, sing fun songs. Jared likes to sing fun songs with his family. Molly flying a kite. Molly likes to fly a kite, fly a kite, fly a kite. Molly likes to fly a kite with her family. Maudie likes to cook good food. Last verse. Maudie likes to cook good food, cook good food, cook good food. Maudie likes to cook good food with her family. That was fun, wasn't it? This is part of the legend of Paul Bunyan, a tall tale retold and illustrated by Stephen Kellogg. Paul Bunyan was the largest, smartest, and strongest baby ever born in the state of Maine. Even before he learned to talk, Paul showed an interest in the family logging business. He took the lumber wagon and wandered through the neighborhood collecting trees. There were so many complaints about Paul's visits that his parents anchored his cradle in the harbor. All was well until Paul started rocking the cradle and stirring up waves. After his parents had paid for the damage, they decided to move to the backwoods where life would be more peaceful. Look at all this chaos that he caused. Paul loved his new wilderness home. He soon grew into a sturdy lad who was so quick on his feet he could blow out a candle and leap into bed before the room became dark. Every day he joined his forest friends in their sports. He raced with the deer and wrestled with the grizzlies. One morning, Paul awoke to find the world under a blanket of blue snow. He heard a moan from inside a snowdrift, and there he found a shivering ox calf. Paul adopted him and named him Babe. Both Paul and Babe began growing at an astonishing rate, but the ox never lost the color of the snow from which he'd been rescued. As the years passed, the two of them proved to be extremely helpful in the family business. At 17, Paul grew a fine beard, which he combed with the top of a pine tree. By this time, other settlers were beginning to crowd into the Maine woods. Paul felt an urge to move on. He said goodbye to his parents and headed west. Paul wanted to cross the country with the best lumbering crew available. He hired Ole, a celebrated blacksmith, and two famous cooks, Sourdough Slim and Cream Puff Fatty. Then he signed up legendary lumbermen like Big Tim Burr, Hard Jaw Murphy, and the 7 Hackett brothers. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Paul put the camp buildings on wheels so that Babe could haul them from one forest to another. As soon as he had cleared the land, pioneers moved in to set up farms and villages. On the far slopes of the Appalachian Mountains, several of Paul's men were ambushed by a gang of underground ogres called Gumbaroos. Paul grabbed the camp dinner horn and blew a thunderous note into the Gumbaroos' cave, determined to blast the meanness right out of them. To Paul's dismay, the Gumbaroos responded by snatching the entire crew. A wild, rough-and-tumble rumpus began inside the den. When that historic tussle was over, the Gumbaroos needed 6 weeks to untangle themselves. They disappeared into the depths of the earth, and they've never been heard from since. And that's where we'll stop with that one. Tickle the clouds, tickle your toes. Turn around and touch your nose. Crouch down low, reach up high. Story time's over. Wave goodbye. Goodbye.